let's talk about Vancouver for a minute. Now, Vancouver is the largest Canadian city in the region that we're talking about, and it is Canada's third largest city. Okay? I will let you remember which are the first and second. So it's a significant city. It's obviously far away from the national core, but it is very important in terms of the economy and the population. It is really the Western headquarters for Canadian business. It's a massive tourist hub, especially for people going north and wanting to explore into Alaska or just kind of the Canadian north as well. So there's a lot of roles that Vancouver plays. It also serves as that western outlet for the interior of Canada. So a lot of goods move this direction or move into the interior from Vancouver. And of course, the fact that it's a port and opens up into the Pacific, so into the Asian markets and the rest of the world, that of course is also key in our increasingly globalized world. It is Canada's busiest port, largely because of those connections to the Asian markets. And this is an area that is growing really quickly. The city of Vancouver itself, but also that greater area, that should say greater, not great, the greater area is up over 2.5 million now. So the last time I taught this class 3 years ago, I guess, it was a little under 2 million. So there's been significant growth even just in those 3 years. It also is a massively culturally diverse place, huge amount of connectivity, huge number of immigrants, and that really has characterized the culture of the area, the cultural landscape, right, and just the diversity within the city. And a lot of this diversity, especially linked to Chinese population, has really come about since 1997 when Hong Kong changed hands from British control into Chinese control. Right? And when that 100-year lease ended and it reverted back to China, a lot of people in Hong Kong left. People who could afford to, people who did not want to be under communist control, a lot of very wealthy people who did not want to lose that capitalist link, right? And they wanted more freedom. A lot of people left. Excuse me. And a lot of people went all over the world, right? Some people from Hong Kong went to places that were fairly close, like Singapore. But because Hong Kong had been part of the British Commonwealth and Canada is still part of the British Commonwealth, people were able to travel to Canada. They were able to migrate, move to Canada under more relaxed migration and immigration rules. They had more diplomatic ties, and it was just an easier transition legally and citizenship and all of those factors. And so a lot of people that left Hong Kong and moved to Canada, and many of them moved to Vancouver. Because again, many of them owned businesses. They wanted to still have that connectivity, and it was close, right? And it was not as extreme weather as you might have found in the more eastern Canadian cities. So there were a lot of reasons that people moved to Vancouver when Hong Kong changed hands. And now, 1 in 5, about 20% of the residents of Vancouver are Chinese ethnically. In fact, it's become such a large focus, and they're so famous for it, that some people call it Hongcouver, which I think is an interesting nickname. But this has been a big transition. And it's not just Chinese people who have migrated here, right? There are migrants from all over the world. And the projection is that in 10 or 11 more years, only about a quarter of the population of Vancouver will have a family history in Canada that goes back to grandparents. I mean, that's a significant shift when you're talking about demographics, that there will be so many more recent arrivals that only 25% of the population will have relatives that were born in Canada that go back to their grandparents. Yeah. So big changes. This is having an effect on cultural landscape in many different ways. Businesses catering to ethnic Chinese populations, um, restaurants, right? All sorts of things. But there's another interesting aspect, and that is the practice of feng shui. And feng shui is an ancient practice that is found especially in China and the Korean Peninsula. But it started in China, and it has to do with creating a livable and beautiful space where you have a positive flow of energy, where you keep the good energy moving towards you and you block the bad energy to try and be successful and healthy and prosperous and all of those things. So, this is a long standing belief, especially in China, where you design buildings and space in accordance with spiritual powers that flow through the place. Okay, so there's this part of this belief is that there are 5 fundamental elements. There's fire, metal, water, wood, and earth. And you need to have a balance between them to keep the chi or the energy flowing in positive ways. And you want to, minimize clutter. You want to have light. You want to have growing things. You want to have beautiful calming sounds like chimes. Right? You want to have a mix of all of these things to create flow and to create good spirits and good feeling. So this is all about creating harmony and balance. And this is a pervasive enough belief that the fact that a huge number of Chinese people have moved to Vancouver has really shaped the real estate market there, because the people who are buying apartments and houses and businesses want to have locations that are beneficial, where there's a good flow of chi. They want to design and decorate their homes in ways that promote this. And so it has really reshaped the cultural landscape. There are, all sorts of web pages that you can go to about staging to be able to buy your home or to sell your home more successfully, and then how to decorate your home. There are increasingly feng shui practitioners being brought in when business complexes are being built. And the places where there is good chi and good energy, and where a location is seen as prosperous and beneficial, the prices are increasing very, very quickly. And the concentration of those locations is actually making some parts of Vancouver more pricey than New York City. So this is an impact of culture on the real estate market in places like Vancouver. It's also happening in other places. Toronto, for example, there is this happened a number of years ago now, with a new mosque being built that was next to a Chinese neighborhood. And it isn't that they were objecting to Muslims, it was that they were objecting to the fact that there was going to be a religious building next door. And religious buildings are often seen as negative to feng shui because they're empty for so much of the time. You want things that are active, not things that are empty. And so there was a lot of protest. There was a lot of people trying to block the mosque being built, and it caused kind of controversy for a couple years. But here again, right, the spending spree, the ways that businesses and skyscrapers and houses are being built is being shaped by these beliefs of this increasingly large percentage of the population. So with feng shui and this globalization of culture, you want to not have, say, a staircase that flows directly out of the door, because that means that the good luck could be just flowing straight out. So a Chinese family may not want to buy houses like that were built that way. You do not want to live at a T intersection, for example, because the bad energy is being directed straight at the house. You don't want the escalators or the staircases leading straight out the door. Things that are good are things like plants and fountains and gardens, things that create energy and that create a flow. And it's not just Toronto where this is happening. There are stories like this of the cultural shift changing the real estate market in Texas and in California. Toronto. Yeah, I do mean Toronto, which I just showed you a minute ago. Australia, right? This is happening all over, and this is a really interesting example of the globalization of culture. All right, we're done with this section then.